Mic check, mic check. I appreciate you guys being with me. It is starting the evening in the East Coast, mid-afternoon here in California, where I will be for the next several weeks before heading back to Utah. And I want to give you a very important update. I talked about Dan Bongino earlier today, but the glue that is holding this together and a key personality that may be working behind the scenes for us to actually get some motion on the Epstein files is our duly elected and so far doing a very good job, Vice President J.D. Vance. Let me give you a roadmap of where we're going. For those of you who are watching this on a replay, I will put timestamps usually within a half an hour of the live stream ending, but we're just going to cover three things here, folks. First, we're going to cover how, in fact, we can see that the person who is going to be very key in the Epstein file disclosures and not closing the case may be J.D. Vance. What he's done behind the scenes, what he's doing right now that we know of. Then we're going to go into, yes, folks, remember when he said, because you'd be in jail? President Trump's administration is actually working on right now a case behind the scenes. We may see a special prosecutor, and Hillary Clinton may in fact actually see the consequences of her crime from over years ago. But James, BCP, the statute of limitations is over. It is. But there is two very important documents that are the key to putting together a case where, in fact, they can, I wouldn't say circumvent, but the statute of limitations will not even be an issue. I'm going to get into that. Very exciting details here. And then we're going to end with one of President Trump's biggest foes and enemies in D.C. Two of them, actually, but one of them is under the microscope. President Trump calling for, let's just say this. We are getting word that there's an investigation into one of the biggest deep state players in D.C. And they know it. It's being reported. They responded. And in their response, they did not actually refute their crime. This is juicy, folks. Strap in. If you haven't done so yet, hit that like button. Let's start off with J.D. Vance. Okay? So we know last week that the rumor mill was out there saying that Dan Bongino didn't show up to work on Friday, was going to take the weekend off to decide whether or not he is going to, in fact, just resign from his position as deputy director. He is totally upset, reportedly, allegedly, on what is going on behind the scenes with AG, Attorney General Pam Bondi. It's reported that it was pretty much Dan Bongino's take, his position, that either Pam Bondi goes or he has to go, that he can't abide both of them being in their positions. And then, of course, the rumor mill was, is he going to show up? And then, as I reported earlier today, he did, in fact, show up today, Monday, to work. But now we're getting more information on this. And of all outlets I'm seeing are actually reporting on this is CNN, that Bongino's decision to show up to work seems to be the work of Vice President J.D. Vance. Quote, several of President Donald Trump's top officials went to work on Monday with a key question unanswered. Would Dan Bongino show up? Hours later, sources familiar with the matter confirmed that he did in fact show up. But his long-term future as deputy director of the FBI appeared uncertain. Bongino did not go into the office Friday and largely excommunicated himself from most of his colleagues after a major fallout with Attorney General Pam Bondi over the handling of the Jeffrey Epstein files. Okay, let me pause there. Let me remind you of a few things. Bongino, who is now the deputy director of the FBI, was a podcaster like yours truly, except he's got more experience in DC than I do. One, he was a Secret Service agent. Two, he was in law enforcement, and he was at Fox News, so he's got a lot more connections and what have you. I'm just an outside guy looking in the inside. Please, folks, I need 100 of you to go ahead and hit that like button if you've forgotten to do so. But he was a podcaster, and on his podcast, he said what all of us were saying and wanting. He said, the Jeffrey Epstein story is a big deal. Please do not let that story go. Keep your eyes on it. He said that in May of 2023, a little over 2 years ago. And although Bongino, going back to this article here, backed up FBI Director Kash Patel's assertion earlier in 2025 that Epstein, in fact, took his own life, Bongino is reported to be angry at Bondi and the DOJ for failing to produce the alleged client list and did not report to work on Friday. Okay, so Bongino was one of us. Now, once again, before I get back to what CNN has to report, let's not forget that, yes, his boss technically is Kash Patel, who is the director of the FBI, and the FBI, the Federal Bureau of Investigation, is under the U.S. Department of Justice. So on the top of that totem pole would be Pam Bondi. Remember when we were all upset that James Comey came out and supposedly, without consulting Loretta Lynch, the Attorney General at the time, that we're not bringing any charges against Hillary Clinton, that she acted foolishly, but he did not use the legal terms that would have gotten her in trouble. I need 80 of you to please hit that like button, folks. Thank you. That way more people get notified. Why was that a big deal when James Comey, FBI director, came out and said that? Because he was overstepping his authority. That was the call, the authority, and the power and purview of the Attorney General. And what we have here is apparently Dan Bongino, knowing that he's lower on the totem pole than AG Pam Bondi. And let's not forget that his direct boss, Kash Patel, pushed several times for the release of the Epstein's alleged client list, which now doesn't exist. Let's go back to 2023. Same thing. Kash Patel, prior to being appointed to his current position, told media personality Benny Johnson that he could obtain the Epstein list with a simple subpoena to Congress. And during his Senate confirmation hearing, he told Senator Marsha Blackburn, I will do everything if confirmed as FBI director to make sure the American public knows the full weight of what happened. And then, once again, we can't blame Pam Bondi for both Kash Patel and Dan Bongino sitting there on Fox News a couple months ago saying, yeah, we've seen the file. He unalived himself. And going back on what they knew was nonsense before they got into office. Now, I know Pam Bondi is their boss, but folks, let's be big boys and girls. You can't be blaming everyone for your own decisions. Did Pam Bondi make them go on Fox News and say that? I think not. Okay, but Patel, since he took his position as FBI director, says, I've now reviewed the official material and we have the conclusion that Epstein took his own life. Oh, yeah, and there's no client list. Okay, so let's go back to J.D. Vance. On Monday morning, no one, as of Monday morning, no one in leadership at the Justice Department has spoken to Bongino since Wednesday of last week when there was a meeting and there was a fallout between Pam Bondi and Dan Bongino, allegedly. And that's when he implied that he could no longer continue in his position as long as Bondi was there. That's what several sources have told several news outlets. Now, the threat, of course, infuriated Trump, who over the weekend, and we've already looked at that Truth Social post many times. And so we have a little bit of, let's just say, friction, to put it lightly, in DC, in the White House, in the Department of Justice, and at the FBI over all of this. Now, it was revealed that it was, in fact, J.D. Vance who seems to have come to the rescue. J.D. Vance, the vice president, spent the weekend attempting to mediate, at times fielding calls from Patel, Bongino, and Bondi, is what sources are reporting. This is the guy that was the go-between. That was the go-between. If 50 more of you could please hit the like button, that'd be greatly appreciated. Now, I've reviewed what J.D. Vance has said. J.D. Vance also, let's not forget, was just on Theo Vaughn's podcast right before the election. during, when they were doing the rounds on social media during the election cycle. And he said, yeah, we've got to release that list. And JD Vance has been publicly quiet on this whole back and forth, but his record is pretty strong on him wanting this to be released. We can go all the way back to 2021, as I discussed a few days ago, when he tweeted out on September 4th, quote, "Remember when we learned that our wealthiest and most powerful people were connected to a guy who ran a literal child sex trafficking ring? And then that guy died mysteriously in a jail. And now we just don't talk about it. We need to release the Epstein list." That's what he said to Theo Von. And then I just read you the tweet. Now, yes, he is yet to publicly comment on Trump's refusal to look further into the Epstein case and his excusing and calling us so-called friends and saying that all of a sudden the Epstein file is a Democrat politician created nothing burger. But the reporting is indicating that he is somehow the one that has Dan Bongino coming back and playing the go-between, the mediator between Bongino, Patel, and Pam Bondi, all of which have said, as far as Kash Patel and Pam Bondi have said, that they're not going anywhere. And President Trump has not, he's indicated that he is happy with them, and they are not, and he's not going to boot any one of them. The person here who seems to be the one hinging on whether they're going to stay or not is Dan Bongino. And JD Vance looks like the one, it's being reported, that playing mediator got Dan Bongino to come back. Because maybe him and Dan Bongino are convincing the others that, in fact, things need to be released. And according to Laura Trump, and I'll probably get into this more in the next report, because I think it merits more attention. But let me just preview it. Laura Trump has said, pretty much, hold your horses, folks. There's more coming. President Trump is very well aware that MAGA is not happy about this and is going to act accordingly. But a lot of reporting seems to indicate that maybe JD Vance will be the point person for this. He certainly seems to be acting like it right now. And it appears that if Dan Bongino is not going anywhere, it's because, in fact, something is going to come out, that there is going to be some motion that's going to make him happy when it comes to the Epstein list and more disclosure to the public about that. Which, of course, we don't just want disclosure. We want these treasonous, traitorous, pervy, disgusting, sick, deviant rat bastards to pay the price for what they did. Or maybe, just maybe, it has nothing to do with Epstein, but maybe it has to do with Hillary Clinton and the deep state. Maybe that is what JD Vance has used to get Dan Bongino to stay on board. Because this is what we know. We know that the FBI, and this has been reported, John Solomon is the guy who's solid on this. He's the one doing this reporting over at Just the News. Let me remind you that John Solomon has called so many big stories early over the last 10 years that I couldn't list them all. He's got great sources. I love a story that he told, I don't know, maybe 6-7 years ago in the middle of President Trump's presidency, where he was looking into something that the deep state was up to. He came home and he was a little frightened by guys in suits, guys from suits from the FBI that were in front of his home. That would scare the hell out of me. That made John Solomon very, very nervous. The guys came up to him and off the record say, hey, we're at the FBI, what your sources are telling you and where you've been digging, keep doing that. You're on the right track. Your info and your intel is solid. They actually came out not to scare him, but to encourage him and to confirm what John Solomon was looking into. And back then, it was Hillary Clinton and Russiagate and the whole Russia thing. So that's why this is very weighty. And that's why I believe what he is reporting here. Because according to John Solomon at Just the News, there is an investigation into Democrat shenanigans that has been ongoing for several weeks and is opening the door for an appointment of a special prosecutor. This is happening under Kash Patel. It's been on the DL, but now it's getting leaked out because, of course, of the blowback on the trying to make the Epstein thing go away. the investigators are looking back, all the way back, at Hillary Clinton's illegal home-brewed server. And it's going to reveal credible information that was ignored by the FBI, and they're going to be able to go after Clinton. Now, how's that possible? How's that possible? Well, it has to do with this investigation is looking at almost a decade. Yeah, actually a decade, because 2015 is when the whole server issue came out. So a decade of Democrat Party antics and misconduct. Well, but James, there's statutes of limitation against this. Yes. Yes, there is. But cases that are past the statute of limitations, if a larger, more conspiratorial investigation, that's how they're going to do it. So let me give you the details. John Solomon updated this report yesterday. The FBI has quietly launched an investigation into a decade of Democratic Party and deep state antics, from Russia collusion to Jack Smith, opening the door for the appointment of a special prosecutor to examine whether the well-documented episodes amount to a criminal conspiracy to meddle in 3 elections to the benefit of Democrats and to the detriment of President Donald Trump. The grand conspiracy case was opened several weeks ago after new FBI Director Kash Patel took over, and it could get a significant boost if Trump were to declassify 2 secret tranches of evidence that identify a potential ignition point to the alleged conspiracy in the summer of 2016. Remember, I told you there were 2 things. Let's talk about it. The first piece of evidence is a classified annex to a years-old Inspector General probe of Hillary Clinton's improper email server. Okay? Who is the guy that was seeking this? Our friend at the Senate Judiciary Committee Chairman Chuck Grassley. Now, this annex is believed to show that credible information about wrongdoing was intentionally ignored and buried by James Comey's FBI. President Trump, who has absolute authority to go ahead and declassify anything, has the power to do this. Okay? So the first is information that has been hidden from the public and classified that shows that the FBI had credible information about Hillary Clinton and her illegal server, but did nothing with it. As a matter of fact, they not only did nothing, as we know, on Hillary Clinton, they actually moved falsely against President Trump on the Russia collusion hoax. How do they get Hillary Clinton on this? Very simple. Hillary Clinton was being not investigated, even though it's credible information, while they were using Hillary Clinton paid for false Steele dossier to go after President Trump. It's this conspiracy, this grand conspiracy investigation that's going to allow them to go and get Hillary Clinton on the server issue. But wait, there's more. Remember something that we were all excited about, and then we got extremely disappointed on. Remember a little thing called, this is going back into the past, the Durham Report? Remember the John Durham Report that we were all excited about and then became at the time a nothing burger? Well, that may come back. That may come back and be a saving grace for all of this. The second tranche of evidence was identified by former Russiagate special counsel John Durham in his final report. The evidence was dubbed in the report as the Clinton Plan Intelligence. And guess what? Like the information that was sought by Chuck Grassley, the Senate Judiciary Committee chairman, this second tranche of evidence was also classified, was placed in a classified annex and was kept from the American public and was also kept from many members of Congress. Both pieces of evidence have remained sealed from public view for nearly a decade and are highly classified because they reveal sensitive intelligence gathering methods. That's why, supposedly, remember, they always classify things or don't comment on things because they don't want to compromise methods and sources and methods. But President Trump can go ahead and actually declassify that information, and it's going to blow open this whole thing, and then allow them to get a special prosecutor and allow Dan Bongino and Kash Patel to go after the Obama and James Comey deep state of the FBI from their actions 8, 9, 10 years ago. And how do they get Hillary Clinton? Well, here's how they do it. The grand conspiracy probe would open the door to impanel a grand jury outside of Washington, D.C., where juries have been reluctant to convict actors who pursued Trump. One possibility is the state of Florida, where special counsel Jack Smith raided Trump's Mar-a-Lago. If the Trump administration were to approve the appointment of a special prosecutor and treat the last decade of weaponization as an ongoing conspiracy, it would allow the prosecutors and grand jurors to explore whether multiple instances of ignoring wrongdoing by Democrat Party leaders were overt acts of a conspiracy to use the color of government to improperly influence the 2016, the 2020, and the 2024 elections. And Democrats and officials from Hillary Clinton to ex-FBI Chief James Comey and ex-CIA Director John Brennan to Smith could then be open to being investigated. Because even though there is a statute of limitation as part of a grand conspiracy, they can go back and look at those crimes. In other words, if they include those crimes as part of a conspiracy, and the conspiracy has more recent information, more recent things they can go after that are not covered by a statute of limitation, they can go back and hook those other things and make it part of the grand conspiracy and then go after Hillary Clinton. Now, of course, this hinges on them getting a special prosecutor. There is an issue with this in that President Trump has not been able to get new U.S. attorneys during his second term to be vetted and approved by the legislative bodies. So that is one challenge that has to be overcome. But here are the key events that that the Republican investigators could go after. One, clearing Hillary Clinton of criminal wrongdoing for transmitting classified information on an unsecure private email server. They make that part of the conspiracy, which they are, according to the report here. They can go after Hillary Clinton. Refusing to pursue foreign intelligence about possible wrongdoing in the email case that was flagged in the classified annex of the Inspector General report that Senator Grassley has relentlessly pursued for years. And then other things, they can go after China meddling in our affairs 20 years ago. Maybe or not, they shelved the report where, I don't know, maybe China was printing something they shouldn't be printing to help a certain person who I'm not going to name, Joseph Robinette Biden Jr. They could also go after the Biden campaign-inspired effort to portray Hunter Biden's laptop as Russian disinformation, obstructing IRS and FBI investigators from going after Hunter Biden, and concealing Joe Biden's apparent mental decline. You see how this forms a chain of a conspiracy. Obviously, more recent is and the concealing of cognitive issues. And then they can link all these other things as part of the grand conspiracy all the way back to the illegal server of Hillary Clinton, and they can go after her. Wow, folks, this is fabulous news. Will 80 of you who have yet to hit the like button, please do so? That way more people can be notified. Folks, this is ongoing, but this is absolutely fantastic news. Likewise, prosecutors and the FBI may examine the multiple efforts to pursue Trump, often using unsubstantiated evidence like collusion with Russia. So that's as far back as they can go. But of course, Hillary Clinton was involved in that, and then they can tie in the FBI ignoring and hiding wrongdoing by Clinton, and then using her Steele dossier to go after President Trump. But of course, like I said, the Trump administration has very few U.S. attorneys confirmed by Senate who could act as special counsel. Now they do have an option here, folks. Check this out: a Senate-appointed cabinet member or agency head who is a lawyer with prosecutorial experience could also act as special counsel. Who does that open up to? That opens up to a lot, quite a few people. But I don't know if President Trump would want to take away certain cabinet members with law degrees, with prosecutorial experience away from their jobs to do this. Or maybe Senate can get their ass together and actually start appointing some of these President Trump's people, get them through. So that's great news, folks. That's great news. And I want to end with this. If you recall, I reported a couple years ago about Adam Schiff lying on his mortgage applications, just like Letitia James did in New York, saying that his Maryland home was his primary residence. He got a primary residence loan for his 3,500 square foot home in Maryland, even though he is, at the time, was a congressman from California. He's got some little dinky, I'm not saying that to be any home, whether it's a condo, a mobile home, a tent, a tiny home, if it's your domicile, is respectful. I am not an elitist like that. What I'm saying here when I say dinky condo is I'm comparing the two properties that of which Adam Schiff has a mortgage on. One is like a 3,500 square foot home in Maryland that he has claimed as a primary residence, even though at the time he was a congressman from California. Now he's the senator for California. So how does that work? It doesn't. Same thing like Letitia James having a primary residence 400 miles, but she's the attorney general of the state of New York. Well, we knew about that, but now it appears that there is an investigation. In April of 2023, a concerned citizen from the state of California uncovered what is believed to be crimes committed by Schiff. Schiff was elected to Congress in 2000. In 2003, he reportedly purchased a home in Maryland with his wife, saying they would occupy this home for 12 consecutive months as their primary residence. Schiff's primary residence is a large 3,420 square foot home in Montgomery County. He reportedly maintains a little condo in Burbank, California as another primary residence. You can't have two primary residences. By definition, one's a primary and everything else would be secondary. Schiff refinanced his Maryland home in 2009, 2010, 2011, and 2013. Now, he was under a House ethics investigation back in 2009, and he said it was an error. He didn't repay exempt taxes to the state of Maryland, but he continued until years later to claim that as a primary residence. By the way, Steve Watkins, a fellow member of Congress from Oklahoma, was charged with criminal counts for doing the same thing. But now it has come out. President Trump announced today that loathsome Senator Adam Schiff has been caught. Quote, "I have always suspected Shifty Adam Schiff was a scam artist." This is what President Trump put today on Truth Social. "And now I learned that Fannie Mae's Financial Crimes Division have concluded that Adam Schiff has engaged in a sustained pattern of possible mortgage fraud." Folks, you understand what President Trump is saying here? His administration, Fannie Mae, has investigated and found that Adam Schiff is engaged in a pattern of mortgage fraud. Of course, President Trump has to say possible mortgage fraud. But President Trump has let us know that Fannie Mae's crime division has concluded that Adam Schiff committed mortgage fraud, and looks like charges may be coming. President Trump went on to say, Adam Schiff said that his primary residence was in Maryland to get a cheaper mortgage and rip off America. He must live in California because he was a congressman from California. I always knew Adam Schiff was a crook. The fraud began with the refinance of his Maryland property on February 6, 2009, and continued through multiple transactions until the Maryland property was correctly designated as a second home back in October 13th of 2020. That means for 11 years, this was a sustained fraud by now Senator Adam Schiff. President Trump went on to say, mortgage fraud is very serious, and crooked Adam Schiff, now senator, needs to be brought to justice. Oh, let's not forget that Letitia James did it. And let's not forget, this is how they got this huge fine against President Trump, supposedly for mortgage fraud, while they did the same thing. So what's good for the goose is good for the gander. And Adam Schiff may be looking at possible indictment and charges over this. because Fannie Mae's criminal division has found that he has a pattern of mortgage fraud. And let's not forget, someone's already been charged with this at the congressional level. Folks, this kind of reminds me of, even though I don't think any of us were alive at the time, but this reminds us of the historical fact that we know that they got Capone not on his myriad crimes, but on tax evasion. Are they going to get Adam Schiff on mortgage fraud? That would be awesome. Even though we know that he is guilty of crimes arguably worse than that. Let's just say crimes that this is a victimless crime in that no one is violently hurt, but of course it's unfair. Let's just say that. So folks, we got some good development here. JD Vance playing point, keeping Dan Bongino on board, maybe to facilitate more information coming out about the Epstein client list, or to keep him on board to go after Hillary Clinton, who now with this grand conspiracy, they can go back past the statute of limitation and put her ass in jail. And Adam Schiff for mortgage fraud as well. Of course, we are frustrated on what's going on with Epstein, but folks, things are happening. Now, of course, like you, I am cautiously optimistic. These are things that are happening, but I can't wait to report when it's happened. When the indictment and the charges have happened, then we can really celebrate. And then when they're tried, we can really celebrate. And then when they are found guilty and we are reporting on their sentencing, that's when we can really, really celebrate. So I'm not trying to celebrate early. I'm just saying I'm looking forward to going down that road with you. And boy, is it going to be good and juicy. And I will be here, as I'm sure you will be, for the whole entire drama. Thanks for being here, folks. Hit that like button, hit the subscribe button, hit the notification bell, and please check out my other show, the BCP podcast. You can check it out at Patreon. You can check it out at locals.com. The link is down below. I will be back either later tonight or tomorrow. Look out for notifications or check the my posts here on YouTube, where a lot of times I'm able to post things for you to see just in case you're not getting notified. Until the next one, big hug, ciao, God bless. Thank you, all of you who were active in the chat. I appreciate it. Put your comments down below on anything I covered. I will go back later and read your comments.